3 minutes. That's all the time I had to ruin Marcus Thorne. I was standing in his private study, the air thick with expensive bourbon and older secrets. My fingers were trembling as I plugged the bypass drive into his server. They told me he was a monster, a predator. My mission was simple: find the kill switch and pull it. But then the door opened. Marcus wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding a small, velvet box. And in that second, the ticking of the clock stopped being a countdown and started being a heartbeat. My heartbeat. To understand how I ended up in that study, you have to understand the world I live in. I don't exist on paper. I'm a corporate fix-it, the person companies call when they're too big to fail and too dirty to ignore. I was handed a file on Marcus Thorne, CEO of Nexacor. The mission was 2 words: search and destroy. I spent months building the perfect identity. Ilara Vance, a brilliant, slightly clumsy analyst who just happened to share his love of obscure jazz. It was easy, at first. The lies felt like a second skin. Every smile was a tactical move. Every accidental meeting by the elevator was one step closer to his mainframe. I was good. I was the best in my agency. Until I wasn't. I told myself it was still a job. I had no idea it was about to become a confession. The first time I understood I was in trouble wasn't during some high-stakes meeting. It was 2 a.m. in an empty office, both of us buried under data for the coming merger. Marcus looked at me. Not as an employee, not as a conquest, as a person. He told me about his father, a man who built a legacy and lost it to the very kind of people Marcus was now fighting. He wasn't a shark. He was a protector, standing guard over the wreckage of someone else's mistakes. Every night we spent together, the line between my mission and my actual life got thinner. My handlers kept calling. They wanted the data, they wanted him gone, and I kept finding reasons to stay 5 more minutes. If you're listening to this, and you've never had to lie for a living, I need you to understand something. It's not the big lies that get you. It's the small true things you let slip in between them. I told him my coffee order was a lie. I told him a story about my sister was a lie. But somewhere in those 2 a.m. conversations, I stopped checking which parts of me were real anymore. That's the moment they don't train you for. Not the gunfights. This. I was starting to see the man behind the headlines. I was starting to care. And in my line of work, caring is the first thing that gets you killed. I told myself I could still finish the job and walk away clean. I was wrong on both counts. The merger was never real. My agency didn't want justice. They wanted his patents. If I delivered that drive, Nexacor would collapse, and Marcus would go to prison for crimes he never committed. The night of the gala, the night you saw at the very start of this, was supposed to be the end of the job. I had the drive. I had the access. But when Marcus found me in his study, he didn't ask what I was doing. He didn't even seem to see the bypass drive glowing red in the dark. He just looked at me with a vulnerability I had never once seen on him.
Ilara, I've spent my life fighting people who wanted to take from me. I never thought I'd find someone I wanted to give everything to.
Then he opened the box. I had a choice in that room. I didn't know yet that the choice had already been made for me, months ago, by someone else entirely. I had to decide. The ring was beautiful, but it sat in that box like a lead weight. If I stayed, my agency would kill us both. If I left, I'd be the woman who destroyed the only man who ever actually saw her. I did the only thing a spy knows how to do. I ran. I left the drive. I left the ring. I left the whole life I'd built brick by brick, lie by lie. But on the plane, watching the city lights fold into darkness below me, my phone buzzed. A message. Not from my agency. It was a photo, the ring, sitting alone on my empty desk. Underneath it, one line of text. I knew who you were before you even walked into that elevator. I've been waiting for you to choose. My blood turned to ice. I was 30,000 feet in the air, staring at a screen that proved my entire perfect infiltration had been a lie. Just not the lie I thought. Marcus hadn't been my target. I had been his. I've been waiting for you to choose. That's the message I was staring at, 30,000 feet over the Atlantic, my hands still shaking from the wine I hadn't touched. I'd spent months lying to Marcus Thorne. I'd just found out he'd known the entire time. I wasn't the hunter who got away. I was the weapon that had just been handed back to the man it was built to destroy. The agency doesn't handle failure well. By the time I landed in Zurich, my accounts were frozen. My safe houses were burned to the ground. Digitally speaking, I was a ghost without a grave to disappear into. I spent 3 days moving through the back streets of Europe, waiting for a hit squad I was certain was coming. They never came. Instead, I kept getting messages. Small, impossible things. A restaurant reservation under my real name. A name I hadn't used in 10 years. A plane ticket to a private island I'd never mentioned to anyone. Marcus wasn't just watching me, he was clearing my path. He was spending his own fortune to buy my life back from the people who'd always owned it. Every step I took to get further away from him, he was already one step ahead, holding the door open. I told myself I was running towards safety. I was actually running straight at him. I finally stopped running. I took the ticket to the island. I needed to know, once and for all, if that ring had been a gesture of love, or a very expensive set of handcuffs. When I stepped off the boat, he was standing alone on the dock. No security, no cameras, just the one man alive who had seen through every mask I'd ever worn.
You're late, Elena. Or should I call you Sarah?
Hearing my real name, a name I hadn't heard out loud in a decade, hit me harder than any weapon ever had. I asked him why. Why the ring? Why the rescue? Why not just hand me straight to the authorities and be done with it?
Because the agency didn't just send a spy. They sent the one person who actually challenged me. A woman who stayed up until 4 in the morning, fixing my code, because she cared about the vision, not the mission. I didn't propose to the spy, Sarah. I proposed to the woman I saw when she thought I wasn't looking.
I want to be honest with whoever's listening to this. I've been trained to read a room in half a second, where the exits are, who's lying, who's about to pull a weapon. Standing on that dock, none of it worked on him. For the first time in 10 years, I couldn't read the one person I most needed to. I thought hearing my real name out loud would feel like a threat. Instead, it felt like coming up for air. He held the box out to me again. The same velvet box from the study, the one I'd left behind on his desk when I ran. Then he said,
The agency is gone. I bought them out. Every file, every contract, every debt you ever owed them. Deleted. You're free, Sarah. Walk to the other side of this island, take a boat, and I will never come looking for you again. Or, finish the job.
I looked down at the ring. It wasn't jewelry anymore. It was an invitation to a life where I never had to lie again. But I had to ask myself the question that mattered more than the answer he wanted. Could anything built on a foundation of professional deception ever actually be real? Could the prey genuinely love the predator? Or was I just choosing the version of the cage with the nicer view? I looked him in the eyes. For the first time in my life, I wasn't calculating an exit strategy. I wasn't scanning for the nearest hidden camera. I was just there. I thought the hardest part would be deciding to stay. I was wrong. The hardest part was deciding to be honest. I didn't put the ring on. Not yet. I took his hand instead, and told him that if we were going to do this, we were going to do it right. No more secrets. No more Project Phoenix. No more Nexacore between us. We walked back toward the house. 2 people who'd spent their entire lives playing chess against everyone around them, finally agreeing to flip the board over together. They tell you never to fall in love with the target. What they don't tell you is that sometimes the target is the only one who can actually save you. But as we reached the door, Marcus stopped walking. He looked down at his phone, and his face went pale. When he looked back up at me, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen there before. Fear. Then he said,
They didn't sell me everything, Sarah. There's one more person coming, and they're not coming for the data.
If you want to find out who's still out there, subscribe, because this isn't over.